And I have 7:01 by my clock. Are we all in agreement that it's time to start? So I'd like to welcome everybody to this special meeting of council for July 28, 2020. It is 7:01. I call the meeting to order, and I acknowledge that we're meeting tonight in the traditional territory of the Squamish Nation. We have an agenda, which we're going to add to that in item 7.7, and that is an update on the Highway 1 rebuild that's going on right now, and that'll be by Mr. Newman, and it'll be a verbal report. So with that change, is there anything else changed on the agenda that anybody's aware of? Okay, I'll remind everybody this is a special council meeting as well. There's no second inquiry section. So the only inquiry section that's here is dealing with items that are on the agenda tonight. And so we will, with the amendment as agreed to, could I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended? Councillor Crowell, Councillor Ludwig, thank you. All in favor of the agenda? Thank you very much. We'll move now to the sets of minutes. We have 3 sets of minutes: July 28, regular, July 7, regular council, and July 14, special meeting of council. Take a motion to approve, adopt all 3 of those sets of minutes. Councillor Crowell, Councillor Ludwig, thank you. All in favor? Thank you very much. Any business arising from those minutes? Okay, hearing none, we'll go into the inquiries. Now, I just remind the public that we cannot take any inquiries on short-term rentals. That is still before us, or rather on the other items that we haven't, that we will be dealing with later tonight. That we had the public hearing, and that had to do with short-term rentals, with the cannabis production, and with the additional suites. And those are on the agenda tonight for discussion, but council can't receive new information until we actually consider those items. So with that, I invite inquiries on other matters that are on the agenda.
And Mr. Mayor, at this time, I'll ask anybody who's in the meeting as an attendee if they would like to ask a question of council to please use the raise the hand feature at the bottom of the screen, and I'll turn on your microphone and video. And Mr. Mayor, tonight I actually received a written submission, and I'll read that out first if you'd like.
Thank you, please.
The written submission is from Yvonne Van Hedegem, and she writes, Al Beaver is out of town. He wanted council to know he has completed an economic analysis supporting the inclusion of Sharman Creek Lands ecosystem with White Tower Forest ecosystem as an intact system, all as a healing forest with protected designation, and he will submit the report at a later date.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And at this time, I'm not seeing any raised hands, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to committee reports. And the first committee report, the first report is the report of the Special Planning Committee meeting, and it's the Garden Suite preliminary review. And it's a recommendation arising from the committee meeting earlier today, July 28. Recommendation the staff be directed to gather stakeholder input and prepare draft amendments to Garden Suite regulations. Councillor Crowell moved. Councillor Ludwig seconded. Okay, any further discussion? All in favor? Thank you, and that's approved. Administration reports. The first one is Chief Administrative Officer, Gibsons Source to See project. And I'd like a motion firstly to receive all of the administration reports. Councillor Crowell, thank you. Councillor D'Andrade, thank you. All in favor? Thank you very much. All the reports are received. Thank you. Mr. Machado.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you. So the purpose of the report is to ask for council consideration of authorizing the reallocation of a couple of budget items in order to support an expanded project, which was originally contemplated as the valuation for Sharman Lands and Arrowhead Park as well. You might recall we had that in our budget earlier this year. Further discussions with the Natural Assets Initiative then provided an opportunity for us to expand, instead of doing parcel by parcel, as we've been doing, to do a full watershed analysis, which they now have more experience with that. And it's something that we've been interested in ourselves, and accelerates our valuation of all of our natural assets within the watershed itself. And when I talk about the Gibsons watershed, we're talking about the top of Mount Elphinstone and go over to the west to Chester Creek, and to the east on Gibsons Creek, and then obviously to the ocean as well. So within this area, what the town doesn't fully appreciate yet is the full extent that we depend on nature for the services that we receive, starting with the aquifer recharge services, and then the drainage that occurs in the creeks and other areas, and then further down, what we've learned already from the drainage services of White Tower Park and other functions. We also have a project on the go to assess the ecological integrity of our coastal areas. So we're likely to be the first place anywhere that has fully valued all its whole natural assets and incorporated into the asset management plan. And that would be our goal within the next year at the best. So the expanded scope, as I mentioned, one of the other benefits to that is that it allows us to then use that information also for the urban forest planning efforts, starting with a tree bylaw that council has considered. The aquifer project, the aquifer mapping study from 2013, it's due for an upgrade for a review in 2021 or so. And so that's where this information can also be useful. And the stormwater management plan that council adopted early last year, the implementation of that, including areas like Labonte Park and Gooseberg Creek and other areas as well. Of course, we, in general, when we're talking about evaluation, is it's a condition assessment, and it's both biophysical assessments using geographical information, but also any other information we might have. If we have biodiversity information, we can use that, or other types of data. So how healthy is the natural areas within this watershed? We also understand from this work what is the capacity of the services that these ecosystem services, not just as they are presently delivering, but also in different climate scenarios, which is something that we're interested in as part of our overall resiliency strategy. And also understanding our risk dependency on these areas to provide us with services from a financial management perspective or other types of risk. That's also an important element of it. And we also get best management practices as recommendations that come similar to what we get to White Tower Park. You might recall from the watershed governance work that we've been doing for the last couple of years, that it talks about all the different agencies that sit within the Gibsons watershed in this case, and the interaction between these agencies and how they impact water and stormwater and other considerations that the town has. So I don't know if Lorraine or Dave, obviously the three of us have been working on this project, and we'll bring other staff along as well. On the financial planning portion of it, maybe I can ask Lorraine to comment if she can, but in essence, this is monies that were already accounted for or in our system, and we're proposing to council that we take some of the money that we had allocated for the water governance proposal. We've used some of it this year, but we won't be able to use all of it this year. I'm suggesting that 20,000 of that could be used for this project. And then talked about the Gooseberg Labonte Park on the second phase from drainage DCCs that we would be able to use as well. Now, they would basically move our budget from the 53,000, which we had approval for, to about around 75,000 as the town's contribution. And on top of the two items I mentioned, We've also submitted a proposal, a grant application to the province for an infrastructure planning grant. Those are worth around $10,000. So we're also asking council to give us a resolution of support for that application. We are also in discussions with the Natural Assets Initiative and the province. There's a possibility of seeking additional funding, and for which MNAI is doing that on their own as well, with our support, of course. So we're hoping to attract some more funding, but this would certainly allow us to start the project in September, and we would expect to have this completed next year. So I don't know if you have any specific questions, or if Lorraine or Dave want to add any other comments or to what I mentioned.
Okay, council, reports on the table. Does council have any questions at this time? Yeah, okay, go with Councilor DeAndrade first.
First of all, that's very exciting. I think, you know, with a little bit of more money, we can do the whole watershed and the foreshore. I mean, so just for the cost of the project, this is a higher value. It occurred to me, I know valuation, at least it has been more based on ecological values, or I mean, also now stormwater management, but is it the consideration of First Nations, in this particular case, the Squamish cultural values being taken into account in this review, in this valuation?
It is, we have not, and the reason is, unless they have asked for that, we wouldn't on our own take that initiative. But I can tell you that this method that the Natural Assets Initiative was proposing that we use, it's being tested in Comox, Courtney area, including with the Comox First Nations. And that's a much more complex watershed, and it has 2 rivers, it has utilities, private owners. But for the Comox Nation, their interest in it, aside from the water aspects of it and so on, they specifically asked to incorporate their cultural assets within the valuation.
Nice.
Another project there that is another one of the partners has asked for species at risk to be included. And so those are very specific things, but we haven't finalized the scope of the work. And we can also, once we do the original work, we can add other pieces onto it. It's a livable model that we could ask different questions, in essence, at any time for that matter. But at the beginning, we haven't included because, you know, it wouldn't be appropriate without the Squamish bringing that forward themselves.
I think you touch upon a very important value, which is species at risk. So that would be wonderful if this could be incorporated.
Somewhat relatedly, I've heard from a group on the coast, the Sunshine Coast. Pardon, I don't remember the name entirely, but it's about a Bear Aware program, but they're looking to do a study on the habitat corridors, and so I'm going to meet with those folks in the next couple of weeks, and we're hoping that that type of information might be something that if they're producing a study, that we would include that in the evaluation if it makes sense and if the format works. Moreover, I've also heard from Director McMahon, who expressed an interest in at least engaging with us, in the sense that folks in the Elphinstone area would be interested in perhaps participating in some form and contributing data or other types of engagements. And I suggested to her that, assuming we get support from council, that, you know, needless to say, it makes sense to include the regional districts to the extent that they can.
Councillor Kroll next.
Thank you, Mayor Beamish. You sort of beat me to the punch there. Well, first of all, you know, great work, Manny. Really appreciate, you know, this initiative. But, you know, further to what you were saying with respect to Director McMahon and certainly Director Hiltz, I know both Area E and Area F have been having serious issues with, you know, groundwater problems, flooding, we wrote, I believe we sent a letter of support for the preservation of Block 1313 because of the implications there with overland flooding and things. So, it's obviously a great opportunity for us to work collaboratively with, to use Chair Pratt's line, Team Sunshine Coast. Going back to what Councillor Danvetti was saying, is it's also an opportunity to engage with First Nations just from their historical experience, and what elders may be able to share with respect to, what's how, it may not be recent history, but there may be some long-term history references that that could be useful. And again, you mentioned the species. I used to live on the Chuckwell Bandland, and Gibsons Creek was a wildlife highway, like bear and deer and wildlife that traversed that ravine, from above Gibsons right down to the ocean. So I think it's an incredibly valuable project, and I really look forward to it going forward. Thank you.
Councillor Ludwig.
Yeah, thanks, Danny. I echo Councillor Kroll's sentiments there. I think it's great that we're doing this. I was just wondering if you could, just a couple of little questions. When we say that we're getting a baseline inventory of our natural assets, does that include canopy cover and tree cover? Like, it's all about water, but of course we know it's all interconnected. So what exactly what's included in that baseline?
So yes, the tree bylaw, the tree canopy, it's a major outcome of the work.
Yeah.
And that was pretty obvious because when we met with MNAI, it was shortly after you had considered the bylaw. Nevertheless, yes, on the trees, the services are primarily municipal services because it's sort of roughly the business we're in.
Yeah.
But the information we have can be useful not just for us. But yes, the tree canopy is very important, and we want to be able to model impact climate on these assets, and because there's other services that these assets provide as well, including climate mitigation and carbon sinking and so on, carbon storage that we also want to understand overall. So the trees will play a big role in it. I think the priority will continue to be aquifer and drainage and tree canopy, but everything is embedded. We're just making sure that without without sort of the asset management principles and the policy and the approach in place, all those other studies tend to fail because they lack this continuity and this commitment. We've got regular budgets and we've got monitoring programs and so on. That's where I think we're going to do this, and then we come prepared to take over the responsibility as we go forward. And so
this will be providing kind of like the overarching umbrella to all these smaller bylaw pieces that we're constantly advancing.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
I'll ask some questions if I can now. One thing in terms of Manny had mentioned the bear aware group. I met with Kelly Reddy last week, and we had a good meeting, and arranged with him to and through Manny to have a walk of the White Tower Park and right down through the trails through the Charmin Ravine, stuff like that, and just looking at habitat and talking about the changes, the protection we intend to do in that area. So he's quite interested in that, and I'll be following up with him this week to arrange a time, maybe next week, to do that. So if anybody's interested in going for a walk next week, we could do that. The other things, and just recognizing as well that, and I never want to forget that we identified protection of our animals as one of our natural assets in our strategic plan, and the habitat for those animals. So it's all very important to us that we recognize that and continue to touch back to that. I would like to see us include kind of in this acknowledgement, at least, that this work can also contribute in the longer term to a regional growth strategy or management plan. because we are having more awareness of the area and the values of the area and the importance of protection of the area. And at the onset, the implementation of this, I'd like to write a letter to the regional district and to the Squamish Nation, informing them of the work that is being done, and inviting them to participate, or at least creating an awareness on their part that we're on that land doing that work, and that we will share any results with them. And finally, I look forward to also to the work that Mr. Beaver has done, and maybe that would add some value and information as well to the baseline that we're preparing here. So I think it's valuable work to be done. It's that baseline work that has to be done, because very often we jump into a project without having done that, and assuming we know everything about what we're doing, and we just go ahead and find out after the fact that we should have done it differently. And I think it's important that we do the baseline work. In that it takes maybe a bit more time, but the longer term vision, the longer term strategy is more important than short term gains. So, Councillor Kroll next.
Do we need to add an amendment to this, sir, to include some of the items you just captured with respect to the letter to the regional district and First Nations?
Well, we could do if be certainly prepared when we come to the motions to add that in. So I think, yeah. Councillor D'Andrade?
I think it will be also very valuable to incorporate, since you're gonna be doing the scanning the environment, do some assessment of invasive species, right?
Yeah.
Because it will tell us the extent that this forest has been impacted.
Yeah, as you go out in the forest, you don't see knotweed. And you don't see butterfly bush either. I mean, you see that in areas that have been growing up and been cultivated and things like that. But you see very little of that out there. I'm not saying it's not present, but certainly not in the concentrations we see elsewhere. So unless we put it there, like around the green waste dump, you'll have it crop up. So yeah. So moving forward, then I would like to support the addition of it further that the County Gibsons that inform the regional district and the Squamish First Nation of this project and the work being done, and with a commitment to share the results to them. Add that as a resolution. So then what we could do is, because we haven't moved the resolutions are there, we could add that as a third resolution to be moved now. If council is prepared to move forward with the resolutions as they appear in the report.
Mhm.
Moved by Councillor Kroll with the addition of the letter. Thank you. And second by Councillor D'Andrade. Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Oh, sorry, Councillor D'Andrade, that was a further discussion. Yes, go ahead.
It's just a request that the material that Al Beaver sent be shared with council.
Yes, we will receive it as we do our correspondence.
Okay.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay, hearing no more questions, seeing no more questions, all in favor? Thank you, and thank you, CAO, for your work on that. Next, again, the CAO will go to the UBCM convention meetings, 7.2, and they're listed in your report in the agenda package.
All right, me again. We have, I think at our last meeting, I'm pretty sure that council had directed us to book some of those meetings with ministerial staff or the ministers themselves. We have submitted applications, requests for these meetings for the Ministry of Transportation, for the Ministry of Forests about the aquifer recharge area, and also the Solicitor General and Minister of Public Safety regarding the RCMP contract or the possibility of that. So those meetings have been requested. We also have information about what other meetings have been requested by the SCRD in the District of Sechelt. And so Tracy and I are preparing a package for council. It's a virtual conference, I should say, And so we'll send you a brief note, but a package with the registration portion of it, and also some information about being submitted. Also, I think over the month of August and early September, then what we're hoping to do once we sort of get confirmation of what meetings have been confirmed, then we can coordinate what meetings we want to do with your colleagues and which ones you want to do on your own. The most important thing, so that I'm able to walk into the office tomorrow without Tracy locking the door on me, is that we need to know from council who's going to EBCM. So if you could let us know, we would register you, and basically watching Zoom presentations for a week. But there's the meetings, the meetings with ministers is the week before UBCM, and UBCM itself, be interesting format to see how it works out, but there will be different sessions. So it would be very important. I don't know if you're in a position to sort of indicate that go ahead and register yourselves, or do we give you a few more days or whatever time you need, but registration closes sooner rather than later, so we want to make sure we're in.
Yeah, I can confirm myself, CIO, that I'd like to participate in UBCM and the AVICC portion of it as well, so that we can move forward with that registration. It is a commitment of time to be in front of a computer again, and we'll see how that works for everybody. Have a look at your schedules. Yeah. But no hotel room costs.
No.
Yeah, you get to stay home, and you'll get room service at home. Beauty. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So yeah. Any questions? Discussion? Yeah. Okay. So that is a report on the meetings. We also have the report. Does that same? Yeah, no, that's the report. So motion, we received it, so that if council will get back to CAO and Tracy and let them know what your intention is with regards to UBCM this year, that would be great. It's there's a lot of good value in attending and in participating with your colleagues in other governments. The next item is also, well, no, the next item is the tree preservation bylaw, and this is the 7.3. And this is from the Director of Infrastructure Services. David, are you there? Good, there you are.
I am.
Okay.
Oh, I lost my background.
Yeah.
I've changed computers, so I guess my background's on the other one. So I believe you were all emailed a copy of the communication plan proposal just recently, so don't go frantically looking 2 or 3 days ago. So we've already got some information on our website that Elizabeth has put together. So we've got a tree preservation website that also links to an urban forest site as well. So the first phase of the communication is to inform the public and of the bylaw. Council has requested, voluntary compliance with the bylaw, and staff have so far 3 potential opportunities to work with developers who are going to be doing some sort of work on their properties that could be impacting trees. And so it gives us a good opportunity to do a dry run on the process and work with the developers, get their input and feedback, and we'll see how streamlined it is, and if there are any improvements that we can make. So it's actually quite a good opportunity for us. There's a proposal to have the public hearing on September 14th, which is the day before your second council meeting after you return from your August break. And so on September 15th, following the public hearing, the bylaw would be in front of council for possibly third reading, further discussion, amendments. We would hope at that point that we've hit it fairly close to the mark, and that we would be able to, if there were any amendments, that we could either do them at that meeting or report back the following meeting. After the adoption, whenever that happens to be, there will be a second phase where postcards would be sent out to all the residents, informing them of the tree bylaw and the processes to go through. And we'll do our best to make a real clear rationale behind the bylaw and link it to our natural assets, of course. And it will also provide some information in regards to the permitting process. There's one other thing I was going to mention, and it's flipped from my head, so I might remember it. But anyway, if I'm more than happy to take any questions from council at this point or comments.
Council, do you have any questions at this point? Councilor D'Andrade?
Actually, it's not. I didn't have the opportunity to read the handout, so I wonder if I could provide some feedback after.
Certainly, just like in the way of language, or.
Well, I don't know. I might, I don't know. Sometimes
that's fine. I mean, I basically, so yes, absolutely. But what I've just told you today is more or less everything that is on that media page. So if there's anything significant that anyone was interested in adding or changing, then perhaps let us know here. But by all means, any kind of editorial would be welcome as well. So we are using social media, digital newsletter. There will be an ad in the paper. That is all in the communication plan. I do want to make note that, don't know if it was coincidence or not, but of course, one of the concerns that has been raised about announcing a bylaw and even just going through the necessary process of readings, whether you will have any developer or the public nip in front of the bylaw. And as I say, I don't know if it was coincidence or not, but just around the corner from my place, 2 trees were removed on, I believe it was Thursday or Friday. So as I say, could be coincidence, and it might not make any difference in the long run, but that concern is out there, and I just wanted to bring that to your attention.
See no further questions. Do we need a resolution, Lindsay, for the September 14th public hearing?
Yes, and I've got one ready to go if you would like.
Thank you, please.
That a public hearing for the tree preservation bylaw be scheduled to begin at 5:30 p.m. on September 14th and be held electronically as authorized under Ministerial Order M192/2020.
Thank you. Move that, Councillor Kroll, seconded. Councillor Ladwig, thank you. Further discussion on that? Okay, seeing none. All in favor? Thank you. And 2 things, David. One is your thing that you did send us talks about a public hearing to take place in the fall of 2020.
Yes.
So I just put September 14th.
Absolutely. Yep.
2020. And secondly, in addition to dealing with developers, could you also maybe have a word with the arborists and some of the tree cutting professionals in town and tell them that the cutting of live trees, healthy trees, is not encouraged?
Yeah.
I mean, years ago, I remember having one of the tree services come to my house. I won't mention the name, but that's not because he did a bad job. It's because when he came to my house and looked at the trees, he said, "Are you asking me to remove them?" I say, "No." He said, "Well, that's good because I wouldn't cut them down." He says they're healthy trees. There's no reason to remove them. So that's the type of cooperation we want to have with people, so that what we did in that case, and it was a case of they were shedding branches, was to go through and thin them within the tree, not to window pane them, but just thin them so that the wind blew through them and the branches didn't hit together and fall on people. So that's the kind of professionalism we want from developers and from residents, because it is possible, very possible, to work with a tree. And we'll see. Well, thank you very much for that and for moving that forward.
You bet. Thank you.
I will also be using my column on the first week of August that I have with the local to talk about the tree preservation bylaw. Elizabeth is preparing that so we can put that out there in that column as well. So we will be doing that. Okay.
Good. Thank you.
7.4, Director of Corporate Services, Municipal Insurance Association of BC voting delegate.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is fairly straightforward. So MIABC has their AGM. It's actually runs during UBCM, and they just need council to appoint a voting delegate and alternates.
Thank you. Traditionally, I have attended that and attended the meeting and been a voting delegate. Anybody else can, it's a matter of holding up a voting card. I would plan to be there anyway, so that I'm happy to do that again. And then is there an alternate of council who might be attending UBCM who wants to be appointed the alternate, just in case I break a leg or get stuck in a hospitality suite on another channel? No. Councillor Crowell? Okay, no. Is there anybody else who wishes to be appointed an alternate? The pay is just the same as it is today. Yeah, so, okay. Okay, seeing none,
I think we
then.
should nominate Councillor Lumley.
Yeah, as the voting delegate. So, we'll just go, and then if we're okay with that, then resolution to appoint Mayor as a voting delegate and Councillor Crowell as the alternate. Somebody make that motion. Councillor Ladwig, thank you. Councillor Diandrad, thank you. All in favor? Thank you. So that's approved. So thank you very much. So with that, kind of a soft indication that Councillor Crowell will probably be attending UBCM as well. So, yeah. Okay, the next one is 7.5, Manager of Maintenance and Operations for pavement markings, sole source contract. And Mr. Tardif, will you be coming forward on this?
Yes, thank you very much.
Welcome. At the beach.
Sorry, so yeah, Croatia tonight. So about pavement markings, that's what I'm here to talk to you about. And so every summer we Public Works proceed to the renewal and addition of new pavement markings on the streets of Gibsons. And this is to maintain safety for both vehicle and pedestrians. This year with the COVID pandemic, we were not able to prepare a tendering package to request bids from contractors. So lack of time, I guess, from us, and also we're at the last minute asking for bids. So staff is recommending that the pavement markings contract be awarded to a local company. Company is called Group of One. The town has had good quality product and very good service from this company in the past. Whenever there was any issues, they were quick to come back and make modifications or changes as we requested. This item also is fully funded in the 2020 budget to the amount of $26,000 or so. Alternatively, I guess council may wish to direct staff to tender the 2020 line painting contract. It just means that it would probably be happening much later in the summer or in September. Right now, we're planning on doing this mid to late August. just following another step in preparing the pavement, which is the crack sealing and the pavement patching. So that's the gist of it for us.
Thank you for that. And I have a couple of questions if I could proceed, council. Have we given direct award to this company in the past?
Yes, we have.
Recently or?
Oh, yes, last year we did.
Okay. Yeah. I don't like to set that as kind of a standard with anybody. Perhaps.
I didn't hear that.
Push that again. Any better?
There you go.
I just say the next year I'd appreciate if we could go out to bids again and anticipate that. So that we don't have a set of pattern of direct award with the same company year after year.
Okay.
And
Yes.
we don't have any information about in your report about who sole source who the company of one is or group of one is, or are they are local? Are they?
Yeah, they're a local company, and they do pavement markings. They have done for, I don't know, at least 10 years that I'm aware of, locally and up and down the coast, I mean, and up to Powell River as well.
Right. Okay. Good. Okay.
If you don't mind, Mayor Beamish, could I just
Go
make
ahead.
a brief comment? One is our intent is to look at the possibility of a 3-year contract in a tender next year. And second of all, when we have tendered it, unfortunately, we get very little response, and you know, we always hope that might change. We have a similar issue with our paving contract as well. That it's unfortunate that for smaller contracts, it's very difficult sometimes to get offsite bids. But we certainly hear your point and do agree with you that the competitive process should be the norm.
Longer term contract would be a good way to go in that. Councillor Ladwig?
I assume I know the answer to this already because someone would have brought it up, but are we legally required to put a call for bids out under the community charter or anything like that?
No, we're not. We have a policy that would determine sole source contracting in our purchasing policy, but council can it can be done by resolution, and it's
Okay.
usually done for smaller amounts of dollars.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Councillor Kroll?
I just would like to move the motion.
Okay, seconded by Councillor D'Andrade. Further discussion? All in favor? Thank you. Thank you, Daniel. Appreciate it. Thank you. And make sure you'll do the mayor's parking space again. Have that painted on. Thank you.
All right.
I shouldn't be too flippant about that. There is no mayor parking space. Okay, the next one is the manager of maintenance and operations, again, decorative tree management. Okay, Mr. Tardif.
Okay, so this is about street trees, and as you know, Public Works, we're responsible for the maintenance of sidewalks throughout the town. Some of the problems we've encountered over the years on sidewalk where street trees were planted near, like too close to the sidewalks and the roads, is that the roots of the trees have a tendency to lift the sidewalks, causing tripping hazards. Some of these sidewalks have been ground, like with our grinding tools, to minimize the tripping hazards. Last year we hired a contractor to actually saw cut. So you probably noticed there were some more smooth, gradual transition on several of those, what used to be tripping hazards. But some of those sidewalk panels, they've lifted beyond repair. So what we're looking for is not only a short-term, but long-term solutions to this problem. For the lower Gibsons, the downtown area especially, where this problem is more prominent. And we would also like to see those solutions potentially applied to future developments where we're requiring the developers to plant trees. And so we would like them to plant them, not only the right type of tree, but planting them properly and the right distance from the infrastructure so that it doesn't cause damage to the infrastructure and higher maintenance cost. So what we've asked a consultant, a local consultant, an arborist with many qualifications, which he can talk about, to do is to come and give a short presentation on what that could look like, what some of those solutions could look like, because eventually we're going to have to, very soon in some cases, have to cut some of those trees downtown. And before we do that, I thought it would be a good idea to have this person, this specialist who has done work in that area in Vancouver and other municipalities, to come and give us this presentation. So he's hopefully waiting. His name is Mike Mills, and I'll let him come on.
Thank you. He is on our screen now. He's already.
Okay, good.
he's
All right,
good.
good.
So, Mr. Mills,
It's all yours then, Mike.
welcome to our meeting, Mr. Mills.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here tonight, Mayor and Council. I'm going to, I think I have ability to take over the screen here. So I have a PowerPoint presentation to help explain what we're talking about. But I will set this up more, that what we're talking about here tonight is a specific problem, but it is part of the bigger picture of what you're working on with your urban forest management strategy. And what we're going to discuss here is one of the problems that you're dealing with and how we find solutions so that moving forward, we don't repeat the same mistakes over and over again. We've learned a lot about urban trees, and so I will switch to a PowerPoint presentation that should be, I should be able to do this. Is that working for you?
Yep, I see you.
Okay, but I want to get to this. This is all new to me, so please bear with me. So from the beginning, and there we go. Okay, now we look good. So I had the opportunity to meet with your staff. This was an initiative from your staff, and basically we met a couple weeks ago downtown along Gower Point Road, and specifically what we were looking at is these two trees, which are the most problematic of your lower Gibsons trees at the moment for your engineering department, as Daniel said, with lifting sidewalks. It's not your only problem, but they're in the unfortunate situation where the sidewalk panels have been lifted as a result of route development, and they have got to the point where they can no longer grind these sidewalks anymore. And the town is in a position of exposed liability if there's a, and I don't know exact, Daniel could tell you the exact tolerance that insurance companies have found will stand up in a court of law. As long as you keep your sidewalks in such condition, right now they're spray painting any elevated crack, they're grinding where they can, but unfortunately a sidewalk is only 3.5 to 4 inches thick. And they're at the point now that if they grind these panels again, you're going to be exposing base gravel, which of course is not a good idea. So what I need to do is explain to council what is actually been happening here. And this is a big problem that people will say, oh, the tree roots have lifted the sidewalks. In actual fact, what's happened here is this is exactly what we engineered the trees to do. And I'll explain this to you in a little more detail. Your downtown revitalization was done somewhere in the mid-90s. I'm not exactly sure the date, but early to mid-90s. And I'm showing you now a typical civil road design cross-section that would have been very similar to what the town of Gibsons would have been working from when you did your last revitalization. And so the engineer calls out everything. They point to every darn little aspect, how thick it is, how much it has to be compacted, everything else. But and they even get down to saying what the street tree is going to be. Where the only thing that's missing is here. They don't have a clue about what the tree is supposed to do. They don't even provide any instruction. They had no training, they had no background, they had no information, they had nothing to offer. It was simply, they would leave a 4-foot hole in the sidewalk where you could plant a tree and walk away. That was it. So what we did is we engineered the tree to fail because we did not recognize what a tree needs to be successful in an urban environment. So we learned a lot. A few years ago, about 2 years ago, you cut down, I believe, 4 trees along this section, just adjacent to the 2 trees we're focusing on tonight. And what those trees showed us was quite alarming. So this is what's actually had. This is 2 of those 4 trees. After you would cut them down, hydrovac the soil so that they could actually cut the roots and pull the stumps out of the sidewalk. You can see these trees were doing everything within their possible reality to survive in this environment where we provided them nothing to grow in.
Mr. Mills, excuse me, are you changing slides? Because mine is staying the same on 2
I
trees.
am changing slides. Are you not getting any of this?
No, 2 trees and a
no.
lamp standard. Yeah.
I love technology. So what can I do about this?
If I
Sure.
might offer a suggestion, one way to fix it might be to stop sharing the screen and then restart and reselect what you want to share.
All right, I'm there. I'm going to share my screen again. I'm sorry about this. This is new to all of us, I think.
It's okay. It's all new to all of us.
So
Yeah.
if I do,
Oh, there you go. Yeah, probably work. Yeah.
I'm just trying to find a way to, okay, so you didn't see these slides. So what I was showing when I said, for example, the sidewalk, this is where they can't grind these panels anymore.
Right.
This is the cross section I was speaking to where everything has been labeled. The only thing that is missing is what the tree is supposed to be growing in. Okay, so I'm repeating myself, but
Sorry.
this is the section where we took the trees out a couple of years ago, and this is what we found. So you can see how hard these trees were trying to survive. And they're amazing that they actually were able to do what they were able to do. So if I can explain what's happening, trees have basically tree roots have basically 4 primary functions. They need to provide stability to keep the tree upright. So in a sidewalk situation, because of the weight of the concrete panels, as soon as roots get out underneath these concrete panels, they're wind firm. You don't see street trees blowing over once they're established. It never happens because they've got the weight of the sidewalks to keep them in place. So the other 3 critical functions are they need to absorb moisture, they need to find nutrients, and they need to breathe. And that point is not well understood by most people, but tree roots have to transpire in the same way that leaves have to transpire. They just don't do it quite as much, but without air, tree roots can't survive. And this is why tree roots are typically found a little shallower in the profile. So to explain again a little more, then what happens is after you basically they built the sidewalks, they built the roadway, they put the curbs in, they undergrounded the hydro. They did a beautiful job from an engineering perspective in Lower Gibsons. But then we needed the trees to grow. And what happened under the low bid system is they had put in all this compacted road base and everything else, and everything was just road base everywhere. And then on a low base system, you had a sub-trade, the civil contractor, come along with his 5-6 centimeter caliper street trees and say, plant them. So he would dig a hole in the gravel, 25 inches wide to accommodate a 24-inch root ball, and throw a little dirt on top and slam the tree grate down and say, grow. Well, the tree isn't going to actually grow in gravel very well. So the only place that tree roots are actually going to be happy is based on the flexibility of concrete in a sidewalk situation. We create a small space between the bottom of the concrete and the base material below. There's actually an airspace in there. So we've got air. Then we've got the heat and we've got the coolness of the soil below. We get condensation. So bingo, I've got two of the three things that the tree needs. I've got air and I've got water immediately under the concrete panel. Then you'll also notice if you walk along the street and you look at this critically, you'll notice that the bulging is most pronounced along the control joints. And that's because control joints are in effect designed to crack. That's where the cracks happen in concrete. So we've increased now a space where water pours in every time it rains and air pours in every time the water moves through the soil profile. So this is why the cracking tends to be more pronounced, or the lifting tends to be more pronounced where the cracks are. But the tree's just doing what the tree does. So when I met with your staff downtown a couple of weeks ago, honestly, what they were reaching out to me for was, Michael, how can we save the trees and fix our sidewalks at the same time? There was no desire by staff to remove trees. That was not what they wanted. They wanted me to have some miracle formula to say you can keep your trees. Unfortunately, it's not true. They have to lift these concrete panels. They have to remove several inches of road base to get everything level again. And you can see how much root damage they would have to do to drop this down 6-7 inches and start over again. Even if the tree did survive that damage, and it's unlikely that it would, but even if it could survive that damage, the tree would just do the same thing again. So that's kind of stupid. So what we need is solutions moving forward. I look at even across the street, for example, on the other side of the street, we have tilia trees. They're problematic due to aphids and everything else, but honestly, does that look like a 30-year-old tree to you? Like, it's just not. It's the trees aren't, the tilia are not really doing a lot of sidewalk damage, but they're not growing either. That's a really unfortunate looking tree. We can do better than that. Then we've got the problem of the trees below City Hall, adjacent to the park. Those trees are all healthy and doing relatively well, but they've done it at the expense of lifting the sidewalk, because what these trees found was this soil layer over here. So they've gone across the sidewalk, lifted the panels, but now they found all this soil to gain nutrients, water. You've got the aquifer pouring in there. Those trees are actually doing quite well. And as a result, the sidewalk damage has been less pronounced, and it's going to allow us a bit more time to renew the trees, the urban tree inventory in downtown Gibsons at a kind of a controlled pace. And I give staff great credit for having the foresight of planting new trees back of the existing trees to give us time for these trees to grow before we find the need to repair the sidewalks and replace the ones along the sidewalk. So, you know, it's not all negative. Some of the things we've been doing have been right. So that leads us to what is one of the solutions we can come up with. And we have in urban forestry, we've come up with a lot of fantastic ideas about how to plant trees better. Unfortunately, I well understand the limitations of a small town like Gibsons. We need to do this in a manner that we can afford to do it going forward. And I believe that tool is a material that we refer to as structural soil. And this is a product that I helped develop back in the early 90s. The first installation of structural soil went into the city of New Westminster in 1995. It's so simple. I mean, it's really simple. We take soil, we take rock, we put in a little binder, we mix it in specific quantities, and that material right there will hold up sidewalks. If I can get you to vision looking up Mount Elphinstone, because that's where that picture is taken, that's fractured rock. And you have leaves and debris and everything that falls down over the years and degrades and becomes organic material, and it gets washed down through the stones by the rainfall. And I don't see any problem with trees growing on Mount Elphinstone. They're growing in structural soil. That's what they're doing. So the unusual product in this one is we had a challenge from engineering when I first was promoting this idea that what's going to stop the soil from settling out of the rock. So we introduced this material, which is called stabilizer. It's basically ground up plantain. It's organic. It's not toxic, but it does tend to clump soil. So we started adding it, and you can see this is a mixing procedure here where the stone has been laid out, soil was laid over it, you throw the binder over top of it. It's that simple. Oh, where'd it go? Why is it doing this? Hang on. I lost my picture. Okay, so here, when I say soil, I don't believe the settlement is a huge idea or a huge problem, because if you've got compacted material here, here, and up the sides, and you drop structural soil into the hole, I'm not exactly sure where the soil is going to go. There's nowhere for it to go, but we kept that binder in there because the engineers thought it might be an issue. So you can see how this works. A tree goes here, here, and here, and these three little trees share this one common soil volume. Now, this is structural soil down here, and you can see after compaction, there is some potential for a little bit of settlement. You can see some open voids there on top of the stone. This is why we introduce a filter fabric that gets laid out over the structural soil. Then you take your traditional road base and you lay it out on like the standard 3-inch course, which is much easier to level than structural soil is. And then you put, whether it's unit pavers or concrete on top of that, and away you go. One of the key factors in structural soil is the soil itself. You only get one opportunity to put the soil under the sidewalks. That soil has to last for 50 years or whatever. But I tend to think of an average life of a street tree in an urban environment as somewhere in 50 years. Eventually you run out of soil. But we made a specific soil for that, and trees, the deciduous trees that we tend to use for street trees like a heavier soil. So you can see that it's 30% silt and clay. If you've ever looked at a root ball of a deciduous tree at a local nursery, you'll notice it's almost all clay. And that's what the growers out in the Fraser Valley grow their trees in. And then of course there's the stone. This was a specific product made for structural soil by Lafarge. There's an actual extra step in the screening process because what we're after is uniform stone size. If you have all the same size stone with angular characteristics, no matter how hard you pack that, there are going to be pore spaces. And the pore spaces are what we do. We fill it with soil to the capacity of the pore spaces that we have. And so after 25 years of using this, in this slide, I've said 200. It's probably a huge underestimation. This is standard operating procedure now for almost every municipality in the Lower Mainland. I have done it in Seattle. I've done it in Vancouver Island. It's in a number of communities in Washington State. This is standard operating practice now. And we have had no infrastructure failure as a result of settlement as a result. And after 25 years, we're pretty confident. So it's pretty much standard operating procedure now. I could show you, this, for example, was a Safeway parking lot in Delta. And you can see all we did was we just did an enlarged pit in the parking lot for the tree to grow in. So here, this picture was probably taken in 2014, but you would see a crack in the asphalt if we were having any differential settlement. It doesn't happen. And we also have a relatively happy tree in what is probably one of the most harsh environments you can ask a tree to grow in. These are not fun places for a tree to grow, these urban parking lots. As part of that study in Delta, we were challenged to say that we had to prove that this wouldn't fail. And so we hired Levelton Engineering. And in this letter that they gave me, it said, it's our opinion that provided structural soil is sufficiently compacted and a separator consisting of filter fabric is provided between the structural soil and the compacted road mulch, that it will provide suitable support for sidewalks. That's what Delta wanted us to tell them. But they went on, without me prompting them to ask this, they went on to say it's also more than sufficient to provide suitable support for structures. They went on to say, basically, you could put a building on it. This is one of the strongest materials you'll ever find. And they did this because you cannot use traditional engineering testing. You can't Proctor test it. You can't California bearing ratio. You can't, nuclear densometry doesn't work. It's too dense. What they did was proof testing. They drove loaded cement trucks over it. They lifted backhoes, one pad on traditional base, one pad on the structural soil, lifted the machine off the ground, and the machine would sink into the traditional road base material. So we got basically on that green light, and also testing from City of Vancouver during a demonstration we did for them, that the engineering community started to buy into this. So I will quickly just run through a few examples of how this works. Here's a lineal channel down the sidewalk, and we plant the street trees in it. You can see here, we've also added a drain line with a vertical upstand that comes up in the corner of each of these 4-foot openings. So that vertical opening then allows air infiltration down deep into the soil profile, which is, as I said earlier, is one of the components that a tree needs. We also, in this case, added irrigation, and we added electrical so the trees could be lit up at night. This is in, I believe, 2016, what those trees look like. And from my perspective, and from an urban design perspective, this is what you're actually trying to get a street tree to do. That's a healthy, happy tree. And if you can look closely, you're not going to see any displacement of the sidewalk panels. In this case, it's unit pavers with sidewalk or with concrete crisscross. But anyhow, it's performing very, very well. This was a demonstration we did for the city of Surrey. The first time we put it in the city of Surrey, it was a Millennium project in Cloverdale where they planted, oh, where'd it go again? There, no, it just jumped on me there. Sorry about that. Are you seeing the slides again?
Yeah, we are. Yeah, I think we're understanding the story too here. So that,
I'm not getting this, but I'll get back.
Yeah.
You got that slide?
We got that slide. Yeah.
Okay, so this is in 2016 what those trees look like. And this slide down below shows you the same tree from the same nursery stock planted in an open soil area, and it's about 1/3 of the size of the trees that were planted in structural soil. Another couple of images, you've got a 4-foot lineal channel along the sidewalk, liquid ambar here from the same nursery stock planted at the same time. The ones in structural soil are actually happier. Same thing here with Succiniphyllum. The ones in structural soil are considerably happier. This was a big project that we did in Aldergrove on Fraser Highway, about 140 street trees along the entire downtown stretch of Aldergrove. You can see how small the trees were when they went in over here, 5-centimeter caliper. In 2014, that's what they looked like. 2016, they looked like this. Again, this is what we're trying to achieve with street trees. Unfortunately, in 2017, an ice storm came through and took out about 30 of the trees. They had to remove them. But again, a learning process from that. Township of Langley staff advised me that they actually found the process of cutting the trees down, getting them out of the holes rather easy. There was no need to remove the sidewalks or anything else. They simply took the trees out of the holes that were damaged and planted new trees. So it proved itself to actually to be quite familiar there. Another example here is I wanted to show you this slide because the 4-foot opening in the sidewalk should really only be used when you have no other choice, because ultimately trees develop what I refer to as a basal flare. They spread at the bottom, and ultimately even a happy tree that hasn't lifted the sidewalk panels is going to flare at the base of the tree and is going to compromise the area immediately around where the tree has been planted. So whenever possible, you actually want to find a bigger space. And in this situation, you can see what we did. We put structural soil under all the concrete. And so this tree is sharing this soil, it's sharing this soil, and it's sharing this soil. So the tree has access to a large volume of material so it can grow over the longer term. This is just a couple slides on a study I did for the city of Vancouver about 1.5 years ago. They are redoing the entire urban core between the stadium area and Science World. And so engineering there wanted to look at how are we going to get the maximum amount of soil under the sidewalks given different soil or different sidewalk profiles. So further away from the stadium, 3.5 meter road right or sidewalk allowance. And we had to find a compromise of structural soil and soil cells, which is basically plastic crates that get placed under the sidewalk to support the sidewalk. And under that scenario with a narrow sidewalk, we were able to get 23.75 cubic yards of soil per tree based on 9-meter spacing. You give me a larger right of way and go straight structural soil, I'm able to get that to 33 cubic yards of soil per tree. Under a different scenario where we've got wider sidewalks, soil cells and structural soil, I got it to 44 cubic yards. And here with a wider profile and an unadulterated channel of soil, we got it up to 68 cubic yards of soil per tree. And so you're talking about when you get to 68 cubic yards of soil, that's enough to grow a 100-year-old tree, happily, more than happily. So just a little more detail on how that works. As you can see how there's a second curve and you drop a concrete panel over it. So this soil is not compacted. There's no rock in it. It's just pure soil and you can get there. Ultimately, City of Vancouver decided against soil cells. They don't like the cost. They're difficult to install. And if they ever had to dig it up, you have difficulties fixing it and it can turn into a contaminated product. So what they decided to do, and their current details reflect that, is they have put structural soil out under the roadway to the extent of the bike lanes. They have not put it out under the road itself, but they are putting it under the curb and under the roadway, under the bike lanes. And that's how they achieved the soil volumes that they were trying to get to. So, and that is kind of what that would look like. This is structural soil from the base of the building to the curb. We've done the enlarged tree planting pits, and these trees along North Vancouver are relatively happy. So I know I've taken a lot of your time. It's a very simplified and really tried abbreviated version of how this works and how it does, but it's a tool in the toolbox that I would encourage the town to consider so that we don't make the same mistakes again when we start to remove and replace the trees in Lower Gibsons. So with that, I'll say thank you. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mills. I'll take us back to our screens. There we go. I see everybody. Thank you. Well, go to Mr. Tardif first. What's your plan, Mr. Tardif? What do we? I'm aware that those trees in Lower Gibsons and the sidewalks need help down there.
Well, what it is I wanted to. I know in August you will be off finally, vacationing presumably, but and then we're not going to do anything down in Lower Gibsons until the rain comes back. If we were to cut some of the trees, like those 2 trees, and then replant them, we're not going to do that until there's water available. So this will be the fall. I just would like to you to start thinking about this, and we have to do something. Like there's too much liability involved. We've already had a couple tripping incidents in Lower Gibsons in the last year and a half, and it's very difficult to keep up to the tripping hazard. And like as I said, we cannot fix those damaged panels, but I'd like also a solution, to replace the trees if possible. So in the fall, I'll be coming back with a request to request to move forward with this.
Budget for this year or for next year?
This year.
Okay, something to think about there. Mr. Newman?
Just a real quick one. I mentioned before that our subdivision development bylaw is, we're currently editing that bylaw, and I'm seriously considering having these sorts of standards included in that bylaw for future future developments such as this.
Good. Mr. Mills, thank you. Your presentation was very encouraging that we have a fix, the type of fix we need, because it doesn't matter what we put in there. 20 years from now, we'll be dealing with the problem again if we're not careful. So it's very important to be dealt with. Councilor D'Andrade?
Just a quick question. Do you still feed the tree in the same way you would feed I don't know, I feed my tree. So what do you do? How do you feed the trees, or you don't feed at all?
Trees are not nutrient demanding. They are very slow on their uptake of nutrients. So when I see people fertilizing trees, generally what you're doing is you're fertilizing the plants and the lawn that's around the trees, because the trees are the least efficient at pulling nutrients. So if for example, you throw fertilizer around a tree that's planted in a lawn, it's the lawn that's going to feed off the fertilizer. They don't need a lot. And as you can see, you put structural soil onto the sidewalk, and 25 years later, I can take you back, and those trees are perfectly healthy. In fact, I would give your trees in downtown Gibsons a pretty good mark for how good they've been, considering the ones in certain areas have no access to it. The two that we're dealing with in specifics, there is no organic material anywhere near those trees. There is nothing for them to grow in, and yet they're still relatively healthy trees. So they don't need a lot of nutrients. We get one shot to put the soil under the ground, and we do the best we can based on the knowledge that we have today, and the trees seem to be doing fine.
Okay. Councillor Ludwig.
Thanks, Mike. That was a great presentation and very informative. I'm so glad to hear that there is a solution, because I love our street trees, and the thought of us having to cut down any more just is really disappointing. I'm just wondering, is there anything we can do, in front of Weingarten Park, this area that you showed us where there's lots of green space between the trees that are uplifting the sidewalk and the new trees that have been planted? Is there anything that we can do to shift the sidewalk over to save the trees? Like, there's so much space. I know this is probably a big cost, but do you understand what I'm saying? Like, do we have to cut the trees down? Can we not save them and try to?
But that's a fair question. There might be a way to do that. What you do need to understand is if you go down there and look at it critically, you'll see that every control joint adjacent to the trees has lifted considerably, because a big root has developed to grow out into that organic lawn area off to the side. And when that root gets to the side of the sidewalk, it just explodes. There'll be roots everywhere there. So if we move the sidewalk over, we're still going to do some damage. Now, it may be worth an experiment to see whether the trees can tolerate the amount of damage that we're talking about. But this is not something that at this time staff actually asked me to look at critically. We were really kind of focused on the two trees, because we're, me as much as I'm a big tree hugger. And I know from the get-go that the minute the chainsaw fires up and cuts down those two trees, your phones are going to start ringing. And part of the reason I was asked to come here was to tell you that it can't be helped, but there is a solution so that we don't do it again. And I feel for you, because nobody wants to see trees removed. And I love all the new initiatives that you're coming up with, the tree bylaw. Move it along as quick as you can, because the chainsaws will fire up. The urban forestry strategy is an important thing. What we're talking about tonight is just one small component of how we should be revisiting how we look at our urban forest, how we value it. Every tree in our community should be valued and should be protected to the extent that we can, and use all the tools in the toolbox to do the best job we can to make it a healthy urban forest. We have ignored that. And I get that. I get in part that what we're dealing with is a town that grew up as a logging town. And so there is still a logging mentality in many of our citizens. And that is going to be a challenge for you as council to stand up against it, because most people, or not most people, I'm exaggerating, there is still a good percentage of the population on the Sunshine Coast that thinks trees are there to be cut down. So it's a re-education process.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Mills, and I appreciate your passion with trees. We will no doubt cross paths again on that. So thanks a lot. And any further questions of council? We'll move on with our agenda. And Mr. Tardif, do you have anything else you want to add at this point?
No, that was the gist of it. At least you're aware of what we're hoping to do or thinking of doing.
Excellent. Thank you. And the painting behind you, Mr. Mills, is that?
That's a Greta.
It is. Yeah, I thought it was. Yeah, it's well displayed and well lighted. Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, well, you know what it's like when you go to the fundraising auctions.
I do. Okay. Okay. Well, thank you very much for your taking time with us tonight.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to me. I know I can go on and on about this stuff.
Okay. Passion's good.
All right. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move on to our next item, which is 7.7. This is a Highway 1 update. And Mr. Newman, you're going to present that.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Beamish. So if you've been into Upper Gibsons, you've seen that the paving is progressing, or at least the prep work is. And we had two asks of the ministry when they were looking at the scope of their paving and their subsequent line marking, is to consider bike lane coming down North Road, so in a southbound direction. We already have a bike lane in the northbound direction heading towards the ferries. And also in regards to the installation of a crosswalk at or near Kiwanis Way. And both of those we've talked a fair amount to the ministry about, and I've had a phone call with them, I believe it was yesterday, time flies. And they have essentially agreed to be putting a bike lane in the southbound direction. The one casualty of that will be the elimination of the parking that exists at present. There's relatively, I mean, there are cars that do park along there, but relatively few. And most of the homes and buildings along there do have a fair amount of parking available. So, you know, the cycle lane is going to be benefiting, you know, the whole of the town, and of course, you know, points beyond as well for both commuters and tourists. So I see that as a valuable addition. It will be going from Reed Road down to roughly a point opposite Hillcrest for the southbound direction, because as you know, we have a right turn lane there as well. And so we lose the required width for the bike lane. However, at this point, the ministry will end it there, and we will have to look for opportunities in the future to perhaps shift over a sidewalk down in that area to make adequate room. Sidewalks and curbs are the town responsibility. However, I think that there may be some opportunities for funding in future. The crosswalk continues to be an ongoing discussion. While they seem to be willing to entertain the idea of a crosswalk, they wanted to complete another warrant, which is essentially counting vehicles, counting pedestrians, and who's going where. I did draw their attention to a previous warrant that they had completed, and the fact that this is not a great time to be doing a warrant with COVID and school out, and they do obviously recognize that. So that continues to be an ongoing discussion. I did express concerns about not having a crosswalk without the flashing lights or some sort of attention, and they call that a enhanced crosswalk, I believe. And we've had some discussions as to what would warrant it from a ministry standpoint. And I asked if that was strictly a financial warrant, whether a crosswalk would warrant the extra costs for those lights. There are products on the market that are solar, but it seems like we've reopened the conversation, and I will continue to keep the lines of communication open with the ministry to see if we can't get that one in sooner than later. And it would be great if we could get it in as part of the pavement marking when they remark the bike lanes and so on, although it's not essential. So that is the status as it sits. I can't comment on their progress as to when the paving is going to be completed. But you know, as I say, we are seeing progress there.
Thank you. And in the absence of doing the crosswalk at this time, did they Any further conversation about putting the conduit under the highway?
They felt that that was not viable at this point. However, I believe that there are options, and they are willing to look at boring under the highway if a conduit was necessary.
Okay, good, thank you. Questions, Council? Councillor Ludwig?
Thanks, Dave. Do you know if they've made adjustments to the timing of the lights for this construction?
No, what's happened is that they've typically the intersections have what's called traffic loops, and they detect the vehicles above it. Now they've gone through and they've milled all those out, and so the signals are on straight timer now. So yes, it is noticeable. So that's probably all intersections that's happened with. So they'll pave it, and then they cut those loops back in after they finish paving.
Okay, good. So it's just a temporary thing.
Yeah, you bet.
Okay, good. Thank you.
And do we have any sense, Dave, when that's going to all be completed?
Well, when I first spoke with him, I believe it was 3 weeks from start to finish. But I don't keep a close. Do you mean the paving itself?
Paving itself, yeah.
Yeah. I don't keep a close eye on where they're at, and I wasn't given a detailed schedule. So that was what I was told at the beginning of the job. So in that area, I would say the pavement marking they'll have temporary markings for a while. And then they'll be doing a pavement marking design that will follow.
And a related question, not the same though, Reed Road, when will the paving be done on that relative to the works that's been done recently up there?
They'll be required to do that almost immediately following. And the roadworks along Reed Road are, as you're likely aware, they're in regards to facilitating the Zone 3 separation. So it's construction of the appropriate changes in between the regional district and the town's infrastructure. And we are having a fairly large gathering tomorrow at the pump house with contractors and consultants and so on. And we are starting the pumps tomorrow, and we'll see how the pressure changes work on both sides. It will be a little gradual as far as being 100% off the regional district, just because we want to gradually build up those pressures and establish if there's any concerns as we move forward. But we're all working together on that, and we are crossing our fingers that we turn the pumps on and they'll stay on tomorrow. But it's an intricate system, and it is we do have some aging infrastructure in there, so we're watching carefully for any leaks and so on.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, any further questions? Thank you very much, Mr. Newman, for your time. Okay, we'll next go to 8.1, which is council correspondence, and this is for the weeks of July 7, 13, and 21. First of all, a motion that the correspondence all be received. Okay, Councillor Kroll, Councillor Diandrad, all in favor of receipt? Thank you, so received. Council wish to draw attention to or raise any issues arising from, let's take them one at a time. July 7. Okay. July 13. Councillor Kroll, Councillor Ludwig.
We had requested some time ago that a letter be sent to BC Housing in support of the Kiwanis project. I'm assuming that's happened. There's now a letter from the potential contractor for the project, again, asking for our support. So I'd just like to confirm that the letter that we had requested in support of the project and how it aligned with our strategic plan was in fact sent.
Corporate Officer?
Hi. Yes, that letter was sent, and I believe they followed up, and it was directed to the planning department, and I believe planning followed up with one of our standard letters for that request.
Yeah. I know I signed a letter at one point as well. No. Councillor Kroll?
Would it require a motion that a copy of that letter be sent to Spaney? Just so they have it?
I believe that's who it was sent to. It was in response to that communication.
No, but the original request came from the Lions Club, going back to last fall, and then again, I think it was in January or February, they asked for a letter.
Yeah, the council letter went to the Lions Club, and the one from planning went back to this recent communication.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Ledwig.
It was in relation to the same letter, so.
Good. Okay, thank you. Yeah, it's one of those things of being out front of a project that we're actually going to have to make decisions on at some point in time, and got to be careful as to how far you go down the road of the contractor saying, "Hey, we thought you were in favor of this darn thing. Now you're making us do all this stuff." So, this one won't be an issue, but other ones could be an issue. So you got to be very cautious on them. Okay, moving to July 20th. Anything from that? I'll run down a couple of things on there myself. In terms of the RCMP integrated teams, I'll be responding to the survey on that, as well as to the, I was invited, as you can see there, to become a member of the Capilano University Sunshine Coast Advisory Council. I have initiated an email to on that one as well. And the other one, I talked with Matthew Lovegrove regarding the George thing. I think it's a matter of providing some information that we could add from the museum that we could add to our website. Be historical information about George Gibson. Mandatory face masks. A letter received or an email received about mandatory face masks. I don't know whether it's in our jurisdiction or whether we want to do that to relative to mandatory face masks. I absolutely encourage everybody who's going into a public space or in public to wear face masks. I don't believe we have the jurisdiction though to require it. I notice a lot of stores require it. I noticed recently I was in Vancouver and many stores, there was one sign was face mask required, no ifs, ands, or buts. And that was, so people are taking it seriously. And I have noticed here that people take it seriously. I've also noticed on the ferry that people take it seriously. We need to encourage that. We need to encourage that by example as well. So that if you're out and about wearing a face mask, if the town felt, if corporate officer felt that face masks were required by visitors to the town office, that was within her purview to require that sort of thing for at the front. So that I think we got to be very cautious. A lot of people around, some people who are social distancing, many who aren't, and we just need to reinforce that all the time. So if you don't have a face mask, which I'm sure you do, but I would encourage you to have face masks and use them whenever you feel appropriate. So yeah, that's all I had to say on that. So anybody else got anything else arising on the 20th? Councilor Diandrade?
Yeah, it's the last letter regarding the dangers of School Road and Gibsons Way intersection. I would like just to understand what is the town's responsibility with this situation.
I don't know in terms of the Mr. Newman, you're prepared to respond to that?
I'm not, sorry, I didn't read that one letter. I wasn't, I'm aware of the intersection. I can comment on that. What was the specific instance or issues that were arisen?
It's a very small letter. I just talk about an older lady driving and almost hit the child and a friend. And this is ongoing. You know, there's always issues with this intersection.
Right.
I just want to understand because I know sometimes there's a different jurisdiction, right? So.
Yeah, so there is the ministry is responsible for the maintenance of the traffic lights. We contribute to those. And then if there's any changes to the intersection itself, the town works with the ministry on that. But we tend to defer to the ministry on that intersection as a whole. And ooh, man, I'm trying to remember how many years ago it was now that we the town staff, the ministry, and the school district work together on making the improvements that are in place there now, which has made a big difference. I know that the one crosswalk if you're going up School Road and you're turning left onto Gibsons Way, I know that I'm not sure if it's the distance of the crosswalk or what it is. It's sometimes very easy to lose pedestrians in what's happening in that intersection. We could certainly write a letter to the ministry to raise that further and keep their attention on that. But I would definitely be referring the letter to the ministry on that. But as I say, we have made improvements to there on the alignment, and we did as much as could be done jointly on that to improve that. And then of course at school time, they do have a crossing guard there as well. So, I'd be happy to have some conversations with the ministry to see what options are to improve the safety for pedestrians on there. I'm more than happy to have a conversation with the local contacts if you'd like.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Councillor Kroll?
I don't know. I'm going to assume it is law in BC. I know it is definitely. Ontario made a big thing of it. It's illegal in Ontario, and I'm assuming it's here. I try and practice it here. Is you don't enter an intersection if there's a pedestrian in the crosswalk. You're not allowed. It's illegal to complete a turn through an intersection if there in fact is a pedestrian in the crosswalk. I'm assuming that's the case here, but it's rarely observed. Like
I
notice.
do recall that from my driving test, but that was a few years ago.
Yeah. So, to answer, Councillor D'Andretti's concern, we do have a police force, and if people are violating an existing law, then, it could be brought to their attention.
Mhm.
This is the first time that
Many illegal turns.
this is the first time I've seen any issues with that crosswalk. So that, I mean, you may be aware of, this lady refers to the amount of pedestrians hit in this intersection is insane. I've yet to go through the intersection and see any evidence of anybody being hit. Is your experience different than mine?
Myself, I'm not aware of any pedestrians. ICBC would have that information.
They have the pedestrian controls across the crosswalk.
Yeah.
If you're following that, I'm not aware of the kind of insane nature of the number of accidents at that intersection. I haven't come across them in my driving.
Yeah. There's I know that there's sometimes also some conflict with the free right, or sorry, the yield, where people tend to use it as a merge and it's not. Again, that's enforcement, but that sometimes backs traffic up into the intersection. But I should ask ICBC for their recent accident record in that intersection.
Before we kind of jump to assume that this Facebook note is correct, I just think that we owe it to that process to take a look at it.
Oh, so that was one thing I missed. It was on Facebook.
Facebook, yeah.
Oh, that's usually a fairly good source of information.
Yeah. Okay. Seeing nothing else, we'll go on to bylaws. And the first bylaw is the OCP amendment bylaw number 98527 for secondary suites. And recommendation that bylaw number 98527 be adopted. What's council wishes? Moved by Councillor Ladwig, seconded by Councillor Kroll. Further discussion? All in favor? Okay, it's adopted. Zoning bylaw, amendment bylaw of 106558, secondary suites. Recommendation that be adopted. Council's wishes. Councillor Kroll moved, seconded by Councillor D'Andrade. Further discussion on that? I don't recall any discussion on these bylaws during the public hearing raised as issues. So all in favor? support that. Thank you. Zoning amendment bylaw number 1050 or 1065-57 for 1037 Venture Way. This is for the marijuana production. I would still like to hear from the proponent on this as to what his business plan is and when he plans on going forward. And I would wonder if at this point in time, rather than adopt the bylaw, I would like to defer adoption of this until we can have him come to a planning development committee and talk to us. Corporate officer?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Unfortunately, at this time, this bylaw has already been the subject of a public hearing, and that prohibits council from receiving any new information until its adoption, unless you would like to go to another public hearing.
It's catch-22, isn't it? I don't like to not adopt bylaw, but I also don't know enough about the project to know what's going on there. It would have been good at some point in time if the proponent had been before us and talked about the business case and the business plan of what he's going to do. And there was certainly no negativity came up in terms of the public hearing at it. So I would not myself, I wouldn't have any qualms about backpedaling on it and say, okay, well, if we have to, if that's what it costs us to find more about what's happening in the time frame and who the proponents are and how they plan to move forward. But I'm only one voice, so that I'd have to hear from other councilors. Councilor Diandrade?
I share with you, and another thing that I have been thinking, I mean, sometimes these thoughts come late, late in the process, is once we adopt the specific lot's gonna have a big land lift. So, and then my concern is once we adopt the zoning, it will be pretty challenging to unzone. So I share the same thoughts as you. I would like to hear, even for assurance, right? I mean, we would like to support local business as much as possible. I would feel a little bit frustrated if it's a multinational or a foreign company. I don't know. That I think we are a small town, so I agree. I would like to hear from
Director of Planning?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just to remind council that this decision is a land use decision. It's not specific to a business plan. It's a land use to decide whether a cannabis production facility can go on that property. So that's the decision before council. Like the use could be done by any business. So a business could come in, it could move, it could change hands, but the use itself is a cannabis production facility use. And that's the decision. So the business plan wouldn't necessarily come to council at any point. The next step would be for a development permit for form and character. That would come to council for consideration of form and character, but not the business plan. Thank you.
Councilor Ladwig, thank you. Councilor Ladwig.
Well, I have mixed feelings about the production of cannabis being allowed in Gibsons, period, but we've gone down this road. It seems like we're supporting this, and if we're gonna support it, I can't think of a better lot in town to do so. So I don't know why we wouldn't carry forward with this adoption. Like, where else are you gonna do it?
Yeah.
It really is perfect, for as perfect as Gibsons can offer if we're going to allow cannabis production.
Thoughts, Councilor Kroll?
I think because we've gone through the public hearing process, we've taken it this far. You know, as the director of planning said, you know, someone may come along, you know, the owner of this property may receive the zoning, turn around and sell it, but someone may not want to produce cannabis on the property. You know, you know, as far as the building itself is concerned, if he does proceed well with the form and character, we should have an opportunity to, you know, have a look at things there, the actual business plan. You know, they're going to have to go through pretty stringent regulations with the federal government with compliance with rules and regulations set out by them. You know, I'm prepared, you know, we've brought it this far to, you know, to see it through and just monitor it as it progresses.
Director of Planning, are you still there? You with us?
Yes, I'm here.
A question in terms of the metal building that's on the site. Will that be removed?
The metal building, there are a bunch of sea cans on the property that will be removed.
Half circle, whatever you call those buildings.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the plans to remove the metal building. We would have to see when they come in, if they wanted to do an expansion or anything like that to the business. They would have to meet Health Canada regulations, so it might require removal of the existing building and a rebuild. But at that, we don't have those details, or at least I don't have those right now.
Are those buildings, prefab metal buildings, are they ones that we encourage or permit in terms of construction use in our in development?
It would depend on whether it meets the Health Canada's regulations and code requirements.
Is that what we encourage in the industrial area to use that type of structure?
Prefab structure?
Yeah, it's one of those kind of half circle type of metal.
Oh, like a Quonset hut?
Yeah, exactly. That's what's there now.
Ah, I see. I doubt I doubt that would meet any requirement from Health Canada for a safe production facility.
I know it wouldn't meet with their requirements, but does it meet with our requirements for site?
I can't answer that with 100% confidence at this point. I'd have to rely on our building official. I don't think it would meet the building code requirements, but I'd have to look into that and get back to you.
Yeah. Councilor D'Andrade?
I wonder if at this point, since once we rezone, there will be a big land lift. Are we in a position of negotiating an amenity contribution?
Well, I don't know.
Not at this time with our existing policy.
His proposal is for a micro production, isn't it? As opposed to a full scale. And it was a limited proposal of a number of square feet, as I recall.
That's right. It's a pretty small lot. It's a fairly small lot, so they're limited in what they can build. Their proposal is for a micro production, and I believe it's a 2,500 square foot building.
Councilor D'Andrade?
No.
Sorry, Councilor Ledwig. Yeah.
And when the time comes, if the time comes that they come forward with a development permit, we can really analyze their odor management.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Like that's my biggest concern if with us having any of these productions in town is the odor, as it is for, you know, members of the community that we've heard from. So as long as at that time we can have a lot of say or get feedback and learn about how they can control their odor, then.
Well, that's a Health Canada stipulation as well. Health Canada stipulates that they have to have scrubbers and do all that. It has to work to their standard that Health Canada prescribes. Yeah.
And presumably they work. If they didn't,
then they could be shut off again. So they.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. Councilor Kroll?
that's sort of really what this whole zoning thing is about. If we approve zoning in a place, they have to comply by the rules under that zoning. And if they don't, we have, you know, it's putting teeth in it. Right now, the grow ops that are up there, we have no control over because they're not operating within a jurisdiction that we can control. So to go back to the question, I would, we've brought it this far. I would move that we see it through.
Councilor Diandrade?
Just a thought. I know we just approved the bylaw and sorry, not this specific, but the cannabis bylaw. And I think we even said that we would allow 4 facilities in our town. Given that there are already existing facilities and if we don't have any regulatory power, who knows how many years this facility will still be in place. So is there any, and I know we also said that we would revise the bylaw perhaps in 3 years, I think that's the number, but if another proponent comes forward, is there a way that we are a little bit cautious in approving, even though we said that we would allow 4? I think it's because it's an unknown territory. I'm not too concerned with the smell because I know we have ways of addressing that, and they are highly regulated. But what I'm thinking is, we are very small land base with a very small industrial area. So if this comes, I don't know the impact, right? Perhaps there will be another 3 consecutive applications, and that's the part that I feel we still don't understand. So I know we can address this in a later date, but I'm just putting, because I think at the time when we were talking about 4, we are thinking just about the 100 meters and for all these facilities not to be close to each other. But I'm thinking more in terms of, kind of the market, right? Well, sorry, not the market, but the presence of all these facilities in such a small base. It's just a food for thought. And
What you're suggesting is we should have asked all these questions prior to first reading.
perhaps. But sometimes you see, that's it's a process, right? So
Right, yeah.
that's why it's good sometimes to take a good time.
Yes.
And thank you, Mr. Mayor. So in terms of Councillor D'Andrade's question about what to do if you get 3 applications and this one still hasn't developed and you're limited to 4, council could, if council wanted to expand it, so say it's a great economic opportunity for the town and you want to look at expanding this opportunity, we could either amend the policy on how we analyze applications, because at this point, if we've reached 4, we would basically turn them away at the counter. Or if they were persistent, I mean, we can't say no, we can say we wouldn't recommend it because of our policy, but you can apply, we can bring it to council, and then council could direct staff to amend the policy. Or if you wanted to stick to 4, council could direct staff to rezone this property again back to not allowing that site-specific allowance, and then that opens up the opportunity. So council can direct us to change the zoning at any point.
Just a clarification, my concern was the opposite. If suddenly there's other 3 applications and in the process we realize there are too many, that 4 is too many.
Oh, okay. So then, I mean, yeah, then council could also direct staff to change the policy to reduce that number to 2.
Okay.
Yeah, so that we would reduce that opportunity.
Okay, I think we should entertain a motion at this stage in time.
Okay.
Somebody would like to move the adoption?
Oh, okay.
Councillor Kroll, Councillor D'Andrade. Okay. Any further discussion? Okay. All in favor? And I will reluctantly, because as we say, we have come this far. And we do have other measures that we can put in place. Overall, they have to build to Health Canada standards, and that's important. And we will see this on form of character. But I would like to see the site cleaned up. I mean, it is already a marijuana production facility, as far as I know. So, Councillor Kroll,
Looking at the time, sir, I think we may need to extend.
I believe we will. Yeah. So right now we're going to take the next step. That has been adopted, by the way. So thank you. And we will move on to in the agenda package with a motion to close the meeting. Councilor Ladwig, motion to close, and it's regarding compliance with section 90, bracket 1E and K of the community charter, acquisition, disposition, or expropriation of land, and negotiation relating to the proposed provision of municipal service. Seconded by Councillor Kroll. All in favor? Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for attending tonight, and thank you for your taking the time to allow us to debate and talk among ourselves as we reach these kind of complex decisions for the community. So we are going to go in camera now, and we will be reporting out after in camera. So thank you very much.
Don't we have to extend the time now?
What time is it now?
Thank you.
I don't have a clock in front of me. Corporate officer?
We have 3 minutes to go in camera and do that.
We'll go in the next meeting and we'll do that then. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. We'll see you on the other side. Yeah.